Hello, my name is PCSpacegoon, and these are my thoughts on Silica, the new real-time strategy first-person/third-person shooter from the mind of the sole developer, Martin Militarek. And recently, this project was picked up by Bohemia Interactive's Incubator publishing program. At the time of making this video, I have 20+ hours in Silica, and many more in games such as Battlezone, Empire's Mod, and Natural Selection. And I can say for certain the core of Silica as an entry into this genre is looking very promising. And even in its imperfect state, it is fun to play. The project is very much so in early access though, and it has a ton of sharp edges that need to be sanded off before I think the majority of players are going to want to sink a ton of time and energy into it moving forward. Let's start off with some positive things though before we get into all my criticisms and suggestions. Because even with all of the stuff I'm going to unload in a moment, I do actually really like this game. Likely the first thing anyone is going to notice is the graphics look really good overall. And even if you are the kind of person who cares less about this, like I am, it certainly will be a draw for some, and it will undoubtedly make the game more fun to watch on venues like Twitch or YouTube. The performance on my 7-year-old computer with a 1080 GTX felt pretty good after I tweaked a few settings. Although there will be slowdown from what I've seen and experienced even on newer computers. Because if you get enough units on the map and they're moving around, your frames are almost certainly going to go down. The game hit early access with 3 available playable modes that you can play versus both human and AI. So if you want a less involved experience, for whatever reason, you don't need to jump straight into a full strategy session versus players. Silica also boasts multiple maps right out of the gate, with different sizes and layouts for you to explore and fight each other on. Along with that, the maps are actually full-sized RTS maps, similar to Empire's Mod, so players can flex both infantry and vehicles, or small aliens and really big aliens, to their full strategic and tactical advantages. There is also a real sense of scale with everything. I mean, all you need to do is stand next to a human harvester to get the feel for what's going on there. It also truly feels like you're facing down a monster if you are a human infantryman in a 1v1 versus an alien Goliath. The game has a full day-night cycle that helps spice up the fighting, and also adds to the effect I like to refer to as Star Wars, aka tracer fire, of different colors, going everywhere. I think most people will just agree this looks pretty cool. The primary systems for both the infantry and the commander are functional, so that players can indeed have fun with the game and develop strategies. Albeit, you are going to run into those rough edges I was talking about earlier. So with that, let's get right into it, so we can have a more educated view of what we're dealing with here. I'm going to first try to tackle the problems I feel have a large detraction on player enjoyment. Later I'll hit on things I would like to see, but are not quite as critical in my mind. Okay, first off, harvester pathing. This will destroy your game. As far as I'm concerned, if your harvesters don't work in a real-time strategy game, it's like a first-person shooter where they neglected to make a button for you to shoot your gun. As you can see in this recording, I did not have to do anything very difficult to make what is happening happen. They just started doing this, like, almost immediately. You can put human players inside of the harvesters, but it is a giant pain to get them in there in the first place, and then you are also sacrificing your human players to do logistics for your side, where the aliens do not need to do this because their harvesters are infantry-sized and can path over terrain easily. But anyway, here, enjoy some harvesters on the dance floor for a few moments. Pathing on other units could use a little bit of cleaning up here and there. It's not terrible, but it's not great. Obviously, pathing in RTS games is something that's complicated and has problems in pretty much every RTS ever imagined. But even with that being said, I definitely think that this could use more DLC to get it up to stuff. There is currently a glitch with the minimap where if you select a unit and then you move to someplace on the minimap and then you try to tell that unit to go somewhere, they will not take your command. Which this is obviously an issue if you're dealing with a large map where you're going to want to be jumping around back and forth as a commander. If you have to drag your map every single time you want to issue a command, it's going to get tiresome. So this definitely needs to get fixed as well. As I mentioned before, performance is an issue once you get a lot of units on the field and they're all moving about. Even on high-end computers where the game says it's not using up all that much, you're still going to end up with stuttering and frame loss and all other kind of manner of just kind of like judderiness. So as you can imagine, for an early access game, optimization is just not quite there yet. And it is entirely possible that there are a lot of people that will not put up with it, and they'll be like, it doesn't run well once it gets so far into the game, I'm just going to not play it. Something else I've noticed from both watching other people play and playing myself is that when the commander is telling you to do something as a player, it's not super obvious that it's the commander telling you to do it. So that's going to need to get cleaned up a bit, and probably having some way for the commander to just ping the map as well to be like, hey, everybody, look at this, would also be incredibly useful. This ties right into my next point. We need voice over IP. So the commander can be like, hey guys, I need you to go this way. And then he just pings, and everybody goes, oh, go to the ping? And the commander says, yes, and there you go. So voice over IP, definitely important for coordinating this kind of thing. Right now, people are using servers like Discord, which is fine, but should be in the game. Not every player is going to go out of their way to get on a Discord server to make that coordination happen, right? Another thing that would help keep people engaged and wanting to play more would be if there was a way to call for a surrender vote when it looks like the game is clearly over. As it stands right now, you either have to like exit out and make a new server, or you have to just wait around for your enemy to kill you off, which could take multiple more minutes. And if people get bored and leave, then obviously you're not just end-for-ending fun games like I feel that you should be. Currently, the game has a glitch where if you climb into a vehicle as an infantry player, it'll leave behind your name, sometimes your unit symbol, sometimes the vehicle symbol and your unit symbol, and this just clutters things up and it makes it hard to do your job as a commander, particularly if you're new. This takes me right into as well, when you're in infantry mode, there's no names over anybody, so you can't tell who is being controlled by the commander and who is running around being a first-person shooter infantry guy or vehicle guy. It would be very nice to have this distinction between these two things, because obviously you're probably going to want to work together with your other human players differently than you'd be working together with the individual units the commander is RTSing around the battlefield. Also then, you don't have to wonder, is that vehicle being used by somebody? Can I go get it? It also would be nice that if, when you looked on your map, the human players were an icon that was a different color from all of the commander-controlled units. Human-controlled units can be green, or something like that. Just so at a glance you could be like, oh look, there's a bunch of human players over there. I want to go be a part of that hit squad. Possibly also having a key you could hold down that would put like an arrow in the name of each building over the top of your structures, so that when you're on the ground, you could just hold down that key, be like, oh look, the factory's over there, that's where I get tanks, you can run right over to it. Some of the buildings can look a bit samey, particularly if you're inexperienced, and it'd be nice to be able to increase that readability so people get right into the fun part of the game, not walking around in circles trying to figure out where the light vehicle factory is. Something else that I noticed while playing that is supremely annoying is if you're playing as the humans and a crab or another small alien gets on top of your harvester and they're crawling around or being up on top, you can lose your entire economy because you can't get the dang thing off of there. It'd certainly be nice if there was some kind of ability where you could knock aliens off of your harvester on a cooldown or something along those lines. That way, once you got units nearby, you could just hit the key, alien gets popped off, everybody shoots the alien, everything's good to go. Because if you lose your harvester in the early game to something like that, you're just going to be sitting there for however long it takes the game to end, and that is just not fun. Okay, rapid fire. Hotkeys for selecting units and production structures. The ability to repair and sell buildings or destroy your own buildings as the commander. Alerts for the commander so they know what's going on. A way for the commander to jump to those alerts, like hitting spacebar. Allow for the commander to use their HUD to add and take away units from groups they have selected. Currently, you can only click on units on the field as opposed to just using the HUD. Allow for the human vehicles, like the aliens, to go first person and aim down sights. Okay. On to the next big thing that I think might turn off new players. As of right now, it is difficult to consistently get back into a fight after you've died. This is partially because you cannot select your spawn point. Even if there are multiple spawn points, you just get sent to one. And because even with the human teleporter mechanic, the commander cannot really support you if you choose to teleport somewhere halfway across the map. The teleporter system requires a level of understanding and coordination that a new player is just not going to have. So they're likely to just end up wandering endlessly and not having as good a time as they might be having if they could just pick a building to go to and be like, oh, there are lots of bad guys there, I want to spawn there. This ties right into my next thing, where I personally believe that both the aliens and the humans should be able to utilize mechanics to allow them to build out onto the map. Right now, the aliens have their nodes, which I think is pretty cool. If the humans could also have something like, let's say, a vehicle that they could drive out and deploy like a pylon to allow them to construct wherever they pleased. I think that might be a nice half measure so humans can't instantaneously start spreading out all over the map, but in the mid to late game, they could potentially set up new attack angles or get more refineries out there. I know that the bunker system is supposed to be used somewhat like this, but having an actual vehicle that would allow you to select where you want to set up as a commander would most certainly make these big, beautiful maps more dynamic and enjoyable to play on, at least in my opinion. One last thing about moving across the map, and then I'll shut up about it. I swear. I feel that the humans should have access to some sort of armored personnel carrier. Maybe one that comes out of the light vehicle factory, and a different one that comes out of the heavy vehicle factory. That way, in the early game, the human infantry players can all get together and go do something cool, and in the mid to late game, the commander can load his infantry up into the armored personnel carriers and bring them along with his tanks, making for some more cool combined arms action. For the aliens, you could have some kind of mid-game unit, let's say some kind of brain bug, that would allow them to spawn into any nearby life forms without having to pop out of the nest and then run all the way over to where the fight is actually going on. These last few things are not complete deal breakers, but they do make the game less pleasant to play. First off, the white loading screens, if you're sitting in a dark room, are quite blinding. The lens flare coming off of some of the jets or the sun can also be very blinding. I know staring at the sun shouldn't be something you should be doing, but when I have to actively turn my camera away and run sideways, it kind of makes for an annoying experience. Alongside this, it would be cool if the human IR could be a different color than red. I usually don't even use it because the second I turn it on, it starts to hurt my eyes. I'm not sure if this is the case with anybody else or if this is just a me thing, but I personally think it'd be nice if it was green or black and white. And the last thing out of the major stuff I would like to see fixed or changed, please uncouple the user interface detail and the texture detail options. Because right now, if you turn on your textures, you can't tell what the heck is going on in your minimap. And I feel like that's just not great. I'm sure by now you're all going, man, Spacegoon must really hate this game. Look at all these criticisms. I assure you, that is not the case. I in no way would be going through all of this trouble to bring this stuff up if I did not enjoy the core gameplay, and didn't really want this game to take off so I could have a good time with it with a whole bunch of friends. This is a super cool project, and I only want the best for it. And with that being said, let's jump into some of the less important things that I feel should get adjusted, or suggestions for the future. First off, there is currently an issue where if you're trying to use the rocket launcher unit, you're going to run into the fact that the hitboxes for the buildings are really big. This makes it incredibly difficult to shoot at things in the distance if you are anywhere near your base. And if you start shooting your own structures, the commander is likely to get a little bit upset. So while this is not a critical thing, I do think it is very confusing for new players, and very annoying for experienced players who will try to defend the base. The crosshair is also very busy, and can end up obscuring what you're trying to shoot at as the humans. The alien's crosshair dot isn't that big of an issue most of the time, but when you start shooting and the center pulses, it can get more difficult to track your shots. Also, the red target that gets placed on a unit when you're being told to attack it can make it more difficult to see where you are supposed to shoot to do damage. If this was just the outside red circle with nothing inside, I think it would be easier to see what's going on and cause less of a hindrance. Having a compass when you're playing as infantry would be incredibly useful so you can exchange information on the fly with everyone a lot easier. Also a key for the commander so he can quickly orient his camera north if he's been rotating it. Giving the commander access to hold and stop command hotkeys, as well as weapons free or hold fire commands for their non-player controlled units. Having a key that a player can press when the commander gives them an order so that the commander knows that they saw that order and that they're going to go do it. This will help cut down on communication spamming over VoIP once there's more players on both sides. Having more distinct unit art so you have a better idea of what you're looking at as the commander at a glance. A way for the commander to lock or assign vehicles to players on the ground. Obviously, more research would be nice, so we have more distinct branching paths while we're going through the game. Empire's mod actually had a fairly robust system that I found to be very interesting. I don't think that's going to work here exactly because of the type of RTS that Silica is, but it would be nice to be able to see something at least similar. Along with the overarching research from the commander, it would be awesome if as you got kills and followed orders from the commander, you would be able to select skills from a skill tree individually on each player. This could be an extension of the system that's already in the game that allows you to select your class. having a way to repair vehicles, or maybe even having a repair-type vehicle that you can construct to help support your attacks, along with medic-style units, or something that is deployable to allow both the commander and the players in the fight to stay engaged longer. Once there are more human players on the field, it would be nice to be able to see a squad system to help players become more organized, and also allow for the commander to see what players want to be working together. This system as well could also be used once voice over IP is implemented. You can have the commander and all the squad leaders in one channel, and then all of the squads separated out into their own channels. That way the commander's not getting spammed by all the voices for every single player, and all the squads are able to coordinate better because they can only hear their squad leader and everybody else inside of their squad. I think having a pre-game lobby would be nice, so you can form sides before the match starts, as well as implementing some kind of commander voting system so people can volunteer and select what commander they want to have. Now there's more stuff I could mention, like voice lines and dedicated servers, etc., but I know voice acting is expensive, and so are servers, so I'll refrain from getting too into the weeds on that for the moment. I know also there's a lot of people who want air units in the game. I personally don't really care if there's air units or not. Air units can cause for some complicated dynamics, so just having a really robust ground war, in my opinion, would not be the worst thing. But hey, if there's air units, I'm sure they'll be cool too. Alright, well, that's all I have for now. If there's any thoughts that you have about this game, please drop them in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you. If you like what I do, please come over and check me out on Twitch. You can also drop a subscription here. I do add videos every once in a while. It's been pretty sporadic, but I do indeed make YouTube videos. And as always, thank you for watching. I think I'm gonna go play more Silica, so I'll see you on the battlefield.